After spending a lifetime together with my husband, I was reborn back to my university days. Excitedly, I ran to find my husband, only to see him standing below the dormitory building confessing his feelings to campus belle. Missing you will be the greatest regret of my life. Gu Qiao, you've been standing in front of the mirror for at least half an hour. What are you doing? Of course, I'm admiring my own beauty. I was mesmerized by the slender, graceful girl in the mirror, a tiny waist, long legs, fair skin, not a single wrinkle on her face. Is this how I looked when I was 18? Youth is truly wonderful. Stop being so vain. It's bustling downstairs. Ethan is waiting at the door with flowers, probably to confess his feelings to someone. Roommate Diana walked in with a cup of milk tea, excitedly sharing gossip with me. Ethan? Ethan! I slapped my head. I was so caught up in admiring my young, beautiful body that I completely forgot about my husband. I threw on a jacket and ran downstairs to the dormitory. Ethan must have reincarnated with me. His body is younger, and his mindset is younger too. He even knows to bring me flowers. The last time he gave me flowers was when I was pregnant with baby. It was the only time he ever gave me flowers, saying thank you for carrying on the Ethan family line. Thinking of baby, I touched my flat stomach. Oh, I still have a six-pack. Baby, let mom enjoy a few more years of happiness. I'll wait a few more years to enjoy my youth before having you. Ethan and I were campus sweethearts, walking hand in hand from university to the altar. We've argued, broken up, and caused a scene. We've been poor, fought hard, become wealthy, and even gone bankrupt. When we were poorest, we lived in a basement together, eating plain steamed buns with hot water for every meal. When we were really craving something else, we'd buy a packet of pickled vegetables. When we had money, we bought a villa, and Ethan even bought a house for his parents and siblings. We supported each other through thick and thin, stumbling along together until the end of our lives. In our previous lives, we were too busy starting businesses and making money. By the time we grew old, we realized we had been so focused on work that we hadn't truly lived or taken the time to explore the world. If we could start over, we would definitely travel more and do all the things we've always wanted to do but never had the time or energy for. Ethan stood at the dormitory door holding a bouquet of flowers. Perhaps because he was nervous, his hand was pressed against his pants, and his middle finger kept fidgeting with the seam. I chuckled. In our graduation year, the two of us started an e-commerce company together. Ethan was introverted and quiet, not good at socializing, and a bit socially anxious. To build business relationships, he forced himself to practice small talk, a habit he picked up during that time. Great! Ethan has reincarnated with me. Gu Qiao, what are you looking at? My roommate and best friend, Sophie, tapped my arm and curiously looked toward the front door. Ethan happened to turn his head at that moment. The sunlight shone on his young, handsome face, and his eyes sparkled with tiny golden flecks. Seeing me, he shyly smiled, revealing 2 dimples. Ethan at 18, forever making my heart race. Ethan walked toward me holding flowers, just like in my previous life. Each of his steps was my entire life. I took a deep breath, spread my arms wide, and prepared to embrace the happiness that belonged to me once again. Sophie, I've liked you for a long time. Missing you would be the greatest regret of my life. Would you give me a chance to be your girlfriend? Sophie clearly looked flustered. She blushed and glanced around, noticing the crowd of curious classmates nearby who began to cheer. Say yes! Say yes! Say yes! I withdrew my hand in confusion and realized that Ethan was staring intently at Sophie. His gaze was direct and passionate. The world was bustling around us, but in his eyes, there was only Sophie. Standing beside Sophie, I felt like a white backdrop. Ethan didn't even glance at me out of the corner of his eye. So, Ethan, who had been my husband for a lifetime, had always loved Sophie? I stumbled back 2 steps, and memories from my past life flooded back. That day, it had rained lightly, and I was rushing out to pick up a package. Sophie said she had left my umbrella in the library and insisted on giving me her jacket and hat. She said the jacket was waterproof and that I'd catch a cold if I got wet in the cold weather. I hurried out the dorm wearing her clothes, but as soon as I stepped out the door, I bumped into Ethan. He lowered his head and grabbed my arm. "I like you. Be my girlfriend." I had liked Ethan for a long time. I fell for him as soon as we started school. The boy I had secretly liked confessed his feelings to me in the rain, and that was when I fell in love with rainy days. No wonder Ethan rarely initiated messages or invited me out after we started dating. I thought he was reserved and didn't like being too affectionate. Most importantly, I was completely overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events. I threw myself headfirst into this relationship, blinded by passionate love. How funny, Ethan must have mistaken me for Sophie Jo back then. So the first thing he did after being reborn was to start over with Sophie Jo. A lifetime of togetherness couldn't compare to the eternal white moonlight in his heart. I took a step back, then another. Ethan waited anxiously for Sophie's response. Out of excitement, sweat beads formed on his forehead, and a drop trickled down his eyebrow into his eye. But he forced his eyes open, afraid that blinking would make him miss Sophie's response. My heart felt like it was weighed down by a scale, or like I had swallowed a mouthful of ice on the coldest day of winter. How rare it was. Even when we went to meet our most important client together in my previous life, Ethan hadn't been this nervous. When I was giving birth, his parents insisted I have a natural birth, saying that a cesarean section was bad for the baby. But the baby was absorbing nutrients well, and the doctor estimated he weighed over 7 pounds. With such a big baby, the doctor recommended a cesarean section. I lay pale-faced on the bed, holding Ethan's hand, and asked him if he was nervous since I was about to give birth. Ethan just said casually, "Modern medicine is very advanced, don't worry so much." Then he sat down to play video games. I was furious at the time, but when I came out of the operating room after giving birth, he brought me a bouquet of flowers. Ethan is like that, he'll slap you and then give you a piece of candy. He's not nervous about giving birth, meeting clients, his son's college entrance exams, or even getting married. But this time, after living 2 lifetimes, why is he so nervous about confessing his feelings? I looked at Ethan, the man I've loved my whole life. His face overlapped with the shadow in my memories, shattering the beautiful dream I had built for a lifetime. Together! 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 The world around me was noisy and chaotic, the sounds coming closer and farther away, and the figures before my eyes overlapped. I pinched my palm, I felt like I was getting heat stroke. I need to think about it. Faced with the crowd's cheers and stares, Sophie Jo looked around frantically, then turned to me with a pleading look. At that moment, Ethan finally noticed me. He held the flowers and walked toward me with big strides, then grabbed my arm tightly. "Gu Chao, thank goodness you're here. You're the closest to Sophie Jo. Please help me talk her out of this. I've really liked her for many years. I promise I'll be very good to Sophie Jo from now on. Please, help me." The beautiful sunset bathed Ethan in a soft golden light. I looked at his half-lit, half-shadowed silhouette against the light, and my memories were pulled back to the year we started our business. We had finished work at the company and it was already midnight. There were no buses or subways. We couldn't afford to take a taxi, and our place was far from the office. $30-something was enough for both of us to live on for a day. The winter streets were freezing, and my toes were numb. I breathed into my hands as I walked with Ethan, feeling an unstoppable joy in my heart. Life was tough, but I wasn't alone. With someone I loved by my side, the future held promise, and the path ahead was bright. Ethan, who rarely took the initiative, held my hand and said thank you for being willing to endure hardships with him. He promised that he would definitely give me a better life in the future. He said he loved me. This liar! Liar! This is between the two of us, why are you making things difficult for Gu Chao? A crisp voice rang out. Sophie walked up, wrapped her arm around mine, and raised her chin at Ethan in a reserved manner. "I need to think about this. You go back first. Let's go, Gu Qiao. Let's go eat. After saying that, Joe Sophie pulled me away, leaving Ethan behind, just as lost as I was. Joe Sophie waved her hand in front of my face. Your noodles will get soggy if you don't eat them. You look so preoccupied. What's wrong? I bit my chopsticks, my heart filled with mixed emotions. You don't accept Ethan? After asking cautiously, I felt ridiculous. Reborn in my university days, Ethan and I were both free. Legally speaking, he owes me nothing, and the promises we made were from a previous life. Now, we are neither husband and wife nor lovers. He does have the right to pursue happiness again. Hey, if I have to agree to everything he says, what does that make me? Men are like that, the more you chase them, the more they value you. Let's give him a couple of days and see how he behaves. Joe Sophie said nonchalantly. There were many men pursuing her, and while Ethan was handsome, he wasn't exactly a heartthrob. I took a sip of noodle soup to suppress the bitterness in my heart and couldn't help but feel a touch of envy toward Joe Sophie. Joe Sophie came from a wealthy family, her father ran a company, and her mother was a civil servant. Unlike Ethan and me, who came from the countryside, Joe Sophie had the confidence and arrogance of a city girl. The things I longed for so desperately were nothing special to her. Ethan wasn't deterred by Joe Sophie's rejection. After all, having lived another life, his mental resilience had grown significantly. He started appearing every day outside our dormitory building, eagerly delivering various gifts to Joe Sophie. Flowers, milk tea, snacks, fried chicken. The people in our dormitory felt obligated to accept her gifts, so they began teasing Joe Sophie. From initial sadness and anger to resentment, my mindset quickly stabilized within just a few days. Ethan didn't even consider that I had also been reborn. He looked at me as if I were a stranger, and to avoid causing any misunderstandings with Joe Sophie, he even blocked me on social media. After 60 years of relying on each other, without love, is there no family bond either? It was only then that I realized how utterly wrong I had been. I had loved Ethan for a lifetime, while he might have endured me for a lifetime. We were together because of a misunderstanding in our youth. He was too shy to bring up the topic of breaking up. Later, I helped him so much that even the dowry money for my wedding came out of my own pocket. He felt indebted and couldn't bring himself to speak. This long life, for me, was a beautiful fairy tale. For Ethan, it was a suffocating prison. He didn't love me, yet he couldn't leave me. Now that he's finally escaped the cage, why would he want to get involved with me again? Sophie, you really don't plan on accepting Ethan? Diana was munching on the braised chicken feet Ethan had bought, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Joe Sophie was applying a face mask and dared not speak loudly, her voice sounding like it was being forced out of her throat. This is nothing yet. The Red Army had a 25,000-mile-long march. Of course, you have to test a man properly. I was buried in my book when a question suddenly popped into my head. Where did Ethan get all this money? Wait! Damn it! I suddenly remembered that our class had a high-value scholarship every year, awarding the winner 10,000 yuan. And that spot was actually given to Ethan by me. As fellow rural students from impoverished backgrounds, my grades have always been better than Ethan's, and my family's circumstances are even worse than his. The advisor even told me directly that I was the most suitable candidate for the scholarship. But when I thought about Ethan's pair of jeans that were so worn they were almost transparent, I decided to give him the spot and choose to work part-time to earn my living expenses instead. Now I just want to slap myself twice. The scholarship just came out, and Ethan isn't rich, is he? He probably spent all the money chasing after Sophie. Thinking of this, I stood up angrily and snatched the box of chicken wings from Diana's hands. I want to eat too. Diana was startled. What's wrong? Are you starving? Eat, it's all yours. Oh, right, Gu Qiao, did you know the school just announced a new Alumni Association scholarship? I was munching on the chicken wings when I suddenly slapped my thigh. How could I have forgotten about that? There's a senior named Nathan from our department who graduated 2 years ago and started a successful business. I heard he raised several $100 million in funding alone. He's currently collaborating with our school on a project and, on a whim, decided to sponsor 2 students from our department. One spot went to the class next door, and the other one went to Ethan. Of course, I gave it to him. Unlike the school scholarships, Nathan's scholarship covered all 4 years of tuition and living expenses, and this money later became Ethan's startup capital after he graduated. I spit out the chicken wing and rushed to the advisor's office. In my previous life, I voluntarily withdrew from the election. This time, I couldn't let this opportunity slip away. I ran all the way to the advisor's office, panting heavily as I leaned against the door. Inside the office stood a tall, straight figure. The light made it hard to see clearly, but the voice was familiar and cold. "Teacher, Gu Qiao has already given up this spot. Please give it to me." "Wait." I gasped, wishing I could turn my gaze into a knife to stab Ethan. "Wait, advisor, I still want to fight for this spot." The advisor looked at me with a bright expression. "Oh, Gu Qiao, you've finally come to your senses. That's the right decision. Working all the time is bad for your studies. With your talent, you should focus more on your academics." Ethan looked at me in disbelief, clearly taken aback by my behavior. "Gu Qiao, haven't you always refused scholarships?" Seeing Ethan so close, my heart involuntarily contracted violently. "Gu Qiao, I really need this money. Can you give me the opportunity?" Ethan lowered his head and looked at me intently, his beautiful eyes downcast, his expression tinged with a hint of pleading. I couldn't stand seeing Ethan like this. Whenever he made that expression, I would have done anything to make him happy. "Gu Qiao, please help me, okay?" Those words sounded so familiar. He had said them countless times throughout our long yet fleeting lives. "Gu Qiao, my younger brother is getting married, and you're his sister-in-law. You can't bear to see him spend his whole life alone, can you? Gu Qiao, my younger sister is getting married, and her fiancé isn't well off. Buy her an apartment so she can hold her head high in her in-laws' home. Gu Qiao, my parents are getting old. I want them to move in with us so we can take better care of them." Amidst the constant cries of "Gu Qiao, you're the best," I kept giving in, kept compromising, so I became the weakest member of the Gu family. Because of the hard work and relentless effort, I developed stomach issues, herniated discs, cervical spondylosis, and shoulder inflammation. "Ethan, you can't say that. All the scholarship spots over the past 2 years were given to you by Gu Qiao. Her grades and overall scores are much higher than yours, and her family's financial situation isn't good. Her parents didn't want her to go to school and just wanted her to get married. Every year, the tuition and living expenses were all earned by Gu Qiao working part-time. As a classmate, you can't just think about yourself. This scholarship is more suitable for Gu Qiao in every way." The advisor glared at me with disappointment, trying to stop me from speaking with a fierce look. In my previous life, Ethan and I held our wedding in his rural hometown. The advisor took a day-long train ride just to come and give me a large red envelope. On the day of the wedding, she held my hand, her eyes red with tears. "Gu Qiao, you must learn to love yourself." Having lived 2 lifetimes, it wasn't until this moment that I truly understood the meaning of those words. In my previous life, Ethan was the brightest light in my dark world, my salvation, and my hope. But in this life, I will be my own light. We both left the office with our own thoughts. Ethan kept glancing at me. He frowned, studying me closely with a probing gaze, looking very impolite. I couldn't take it anymore and turned around. "What are you looking at? Why did you suddenly change your mind?" Ethan asked tentatively. I found it a bit amusing. "Since you hold such contempt for our past life and have decided to start anew, I naturally can't keep giving in to you or helping you with everything anymore. Because we're poor." Ethan blinked, looking a bit dazed. I had never complained about my hardships in front of him. No matter what happened, I would always smile and say I was fine. Clearly, my behavior was completely different from before my rebirth. "Baby, you're here. Where's baby?" I looked around and met Ethan's expectant gaze. Gu Qiao, you've reincarnated too. I neither denied nor confirmed it, giving Ethan a meaningful look before walking away. Hey, no, Gu Qiao, why are you so angry? Since that's the case, let's just get everything out in the open. My attitude angered Ethan. After all, I had pampered him for his entire life, and there had been very few moments when I had been so cold toward him. Ethan and I sat on a bench by the lake at school. The sunlight shone on the lake, as if a layer of fine gold leaf had been sprinkled on its surface. The scenery was beautiful, but I had no heart to appreciate it. Because Ethan said that the happiness of our past life was something I had stolen. I've tolerated you for a lifetime and paid for my own mistakes. What's wrong with pursuing the person I love in this life? Ethan was clearly upset. He glared at me with a stiff neck, as if I were the root of all his misfortune. Haha, I was so angry I laughed. Ethan, if you didn't like me, why didn't you say so from the beginning? You didn't say it in college, you didn't say it when we were getting married, and you never mentioned it in all these years. Did I force you to marry me at gunpoint? Ethan got even angrier. It's all your fault. After I confessed my feelings, you immediately told your roommate, and Diana, that gossip, posted it in the class group chat, saying I had to treat everyone. If I had broken up with you right away, what would the classmates have said about me? After we were together, everyone said how good you were to me, as if the moment I broke up with you, I'd become a heartless villain. Gu Qiao, all of this is your fault. You put me on a moral pedestal and used conscience and morality to coerce me for my entire life. In my memory, Ethan was handsome, with fair skin and sharp features that made him shine. He was the most handsome young man, middle-aged man, and elderly man I had ever seen. I squinted and scanned Ethan's face inch by inch, noticing for the first time that although his skin was fair, it had a slightly dull complexion, and there were 2 pimples on his chin. His nose, though high, was a bit broad, giving him a less refined appearance. The radiant Ethan was just an ordinary student with slightly delicate features after all. The light he emitted came from my love, not from himself. If that's the case, let's pretend we never met. From now on, let's not contact each other anymore. Goodbye. I stood up and turned to leave, feeling something inside me collapse, leaving a pile of ruins behind. I came from a rural family that heavily favored sons over daughters. My parents believed having a daughter was a huge loss, and they tried every means possible to recoup that loss through me. When I was in middle school, my parents repeatedly said that as soon as I graduated, I would have to go out and work. To escape the fate of working in a factory, I studied relentlessly and eventually entered the top high school in the city with the highest scores in the city. The school waived all tuition and fees and promised to provide a scholarship. The village committee chairman and local officials visited my parents multiple times, urging them to let me continue my education. After high school, my parents agreed to let me go to college, but only if I sent them 2,000 yuan every month. I agreed without hesitation and found an excuse to transfer my household registration to the school. After transferring my household registration, I blocked all contact with my parents. They had never left their hometown in their entire lives, and since they didn't care about me, they didn't even know my major or class. With the help of the village committee head, I finally broke free from my parents during university. I became a person without a home, so I desperately longed for a family and for love. In my previous life, I clung to Ethan like a drowning person clinging to a lifeline. I wanted a family so badly that even when Ethan wasn't kind to me, it was still better than what I had with my parents. In my rural home, I didn't even have my own room, my bed was in the corner of the living room, with no privacy or dignity. I saw Ethan as my savior. For every kindness he showed me, I was willing to give my life in return. It wasn't until now that I realized I shouldn't have lived outside myself for love. I should have learned to love myself. No one can be your savior except yourself. I took big steps forward, leaving all the past and darkness behind me. I eventually received the scholarship, and my advisor said that Nathan Sr., who awarded the scholarship, wanted to meet me. Him? It's actually him. I stared in disbelief at the familiar man before me. He was one of our company's investors, and after the company went bankrupt, he injected funds to save us. Later, after Ethan and I got married, he disappeared from our lives. I never expected to see him again, and I couldn't help but feel excited. Hello, Mr. Pay. Thank you, Mr. Pay. My earnest bow made him laugh. Please sit down. The meeting with Nathan was pleasant, and we exchanged contact information. He said I could reach out to him if I ever needed help with anything. I walked back to the dormitory feeling elated. A drop of kindness deserves a spring of gratitude. Nathan had helped me greatly in the past, and he remained my benefactor in this life. I've been in e-commerce all my life, and now it's just the beginning of the e-commerce boom. Nathan's company hasn't started building an e-commerce team yet, so I can help him out and repay the favor. In a good mood, I generously bought a bag of fruits and snacks to bring back to the dorm to treat my roommate. As soon as I returned to the dorm, I noticed 2 large bags of KFC on Joe-Sophie's desk. Seeing me, Joe-Sophie generously handed me a burger and 2 egg tarts. Here, you didn't have lunch, did you? Eat while it's hot. Diana winked at me. Eat quickly, it's a lucky burger. I blinked in confusion. What kind of burger? Oh no, Sophie and Ethan are together. Joe-Sophie rolled her eyes at Diana in a playful manner. Eat up. The chicken drumstick can't even fill your mouth. I looked at Joe-Sophie in astonishment. She's with Ethan? Joe-Sophie glanced at me awkwardly. We all lived in the same dormitory and spent almost 24 hours a day together. My crush on Ethan was a secret I kept from everyone else, but not from Joe-Sophie, who slept across from me. The 2 hardest things to hide in this world are a cough and love. Joe-Sophie tidied her hair and smiled awkwardly. Gu Qiao, you don't mind, do you? I gave her a sincere smile. What are you talking about? Of course I don't mind. We're friends, nothing else matters. The past is dark and unforgettable, but the future is bright and promising. Ethan is just a thing of the past. Now I just want to study hard and earn money. Dinner was with the past. Ethan invited everyone in the dorm to a hot pot dinner. At the table, he was extremely attentive to Joe-Sophie, pulling out chairs, pouring water, peeling shrimp. Joe-Sophie felt a mix of emotion and awkwardness. She kept glancing at me, afraid I might be upset. But I just buried my head in my bowl, stuffing myself with beef tendon, tripe, and duck feet. When Ethan and I were together, we were both poor students. I couldn't bear to spend his money, so every time we went out, we'd have spicy hot pot or fast food, and after eating, we'd split the bill. There weren't many times when Ethan would treat us. I have to eat more, maybe even eat back what I owed from my past life. I used to think that genuine feelings could be exchanged for genuine feelings, but now I know that you can't exchange human hearts for dog hearts. When it came time to pay the bill for dinner, Ethan paid over $500. That amount of money is normally his living expenses for half a month. We'll be wealthy in our old age, and he's used to spending money freely, so he probably won't be able to save it all back. I wonder what will happen when he realizes that making money isn't as easy as it used to be. Everyone thinks that being reborn means having the key to wealth, but we're just second-year college students who can't even scrape together $1,000 between the 2 of us. Stock trading, I do remember a few high-performing stocks that went up several dozen times, but in the short term, there hasn't been much change. Buying a house is even more out of the question. We don't even have enough money for food, let alone a house. Ethan's family background is actually similar to mine, but he's a boy and the eldest son, so his parents spent all the family money on him, which is why his situation is better than mine. I started spending every day in the library working diligently on a business plan. Nathan owns a small smart home appliance company that currently sells its products in major shopping malls. As a seasoned e-commerce professional, I know that time is money. The sooner we enter this market, the bigger slice of the pie we can get. In my previous life, Ethan and I ran a company together. I handled operations and sales, while he managed after-sales service and factory coordination. So I tackled the planning with ease, and within a few days, I had a thick proposal ready. Did you do this? Nathan sat back in his chair, flipping through my proposal page by page with a relaxed expression. I stared at his handsome face, feeling a bit nervous. In my previous life, despite working hard all my life and achieving some success, I was at best just a little better off than the average person. But Nathan was the real deal. If I could gain Nathan's approval and board his ship, my achievements in this lifetime would undoubtedly reach new heights. It's not bad. Our team is already preparing to launch the e-commerce department. Come to my company for an internship whenever you're free. Really? Thank you, senior. I clenched my fists and looked at Nathan with sparkling eyes. This is great. All the hard work over the past few days hasn't been in vain. Hello, here's the cheesecake, vanilla milk, and strawberry waffles you ordered. This is the only coffee shop near our school, and everything is quite expensive. I only came here once with Sophie. I stared in disbelief as the waiter brought over a table full of cakes. Nathan straightened his sleeves and stood up, saying, "All right, I have to go now. Little girl, eat more. Look how skinny you are." Nathan left, taking the plan I had carefully prepared. I curled up in the chair, taking small bites of the cake. The cheesecake was soft and creamy, with a rich milk flavor. It's so sweet. What did you say? Ethan asked you for money? Diana stared at Sophie in disbelief, and I was a bit surprised too. After the initial shock, I couldn't help but understand. Ethan's habit was spoiled by me. At the time, I was working hard, while he spent all his free time in the library after class. So by the end, I was financially better off than him and often gave him money to help out. He was too shy to ask, so I said it was a loan. Ethan and I were each other's first loves, and we hadn't dated anyone else since we started dating. Ethan probably thought that in such an intimate relationship, borrowing money from each other was normal, just like borrowing from a close friend. How much did he ask you for? How could he bring himself to ask? You've only been together for a short time. Diana pulled Sophie's arm, her face betraying her astonishment. It wasn't much, just $1,000. He said he had invested his scholarship money in stocks. Ethan never touched stocks when he was in college. If I remember correctly, it wasn't until we were in our 40s and financially stable that he started learning about investments and financial planning. Does he really remember the ups and downs of the stock market from his college days? What's not much? $1,000 is almost a month's living expenses. It's only because you're well off that you think it's not much. Sophie was also a bit upset. I definitely wouldn't lend him money. What kind of guy asks a girl for money? If you don't have money, don't date. Lately, he's been buying me this and that, and now he wants me to pay for it myself. That's just too funny. I silently lowered my head and continued reading, wondering how long Ethan and Sophie's relationship would last. The next day, I had no classes, so I got up early. Nathan's company wasn't far from school, but it still took over an hour by bus. I was sitting in my seat listening to English recitations on my phone when a familiar figure got on the bus. Ethan stormed over to me, yanked my earphones out, and shouted, "Gu Qiao! Did you tell Sophie to break up with me? Is this guy crazy?" I snatched the headphones back and rolled my eyes dramatically. "Ethan, can you stay away from me? Seeing you this early in the morning is my bad luck." Ethan's beautiful eyes seemed to be spitting fire. I thought we made it clear that day. I've always liked Sophie. We were just a misunderstanding. Can you stop being so petty and ruining our relationship? Aren't you being too self-centered? Who cares about ruining your relationship? You're the one who asked Sophie for money and scared her off. What does that have to do with me? Ethan froze. Money? She broke up with me because of money? But what's wrong with borrowing money? I'll pay it back. I didn't respond to him but instead tapped the shoulder of the guy sitting in front of me. "Classmate, I have a question for you. I just started dating a guy 2 weeks ago, and he asked me to borrow $1,000. Should I lend it to him?" The guy immediately frowned. What kind of man asks a woman for money? Classmate, use your head. If he really likes you, he'd rather beg on the streets than ask you for money. That's the basic dignity and responsibility of a man. Take my advice, break up with him as soon as possible. Ethan looked completely devastated, sitting there dumbfounded. He turned his head and looked at me blankly. But before, you used to borrow money from me all the time, didn't you? I forced a smile and tugged at the corner of my mouth, because I'm a fool. That was the truth. I finally realized that in my previous life, I had given my heart and soul to Ethan's family, only to move myself and enrich others. I had always thought that if I was good to others, they would be grateful. If they weren't, it meant I wasn't good enough. But reality had given me a harsh lesson. I spent my entire life self-righteously giving, only to be seen by Ethan as the greatest regret of his life. Ethan turned his head toward the window in silence, and we rode in silence for the rest of the way, neither of us speaking. "Why are you following me?" Ethan turned his head impatiently to look at me, and I stared back at him just as impatiently. "Who's following you?" "I'm going to my internship." Unbeknownst to me, Ethan and I ended up at the same company. Nathan personally greeted us and assigned both of us to the e-commerce department. Ethan was surprised to see Nathan. Once Nathan left, he sneered, "Gu Chow, if you live another life, you'll learn to be materialistic and cling to a sugar daddy, huh?" Same here. Time flies when you're working hard. The team leader of the operations team was very polite to me. He started calling me Little Gu, then Gu Chow, and now Claire. I feel like if I stay a little longer, he might even call me MS. Gu. Ethan, on the other hand, didn't get the same treatment. He was just doing menial tasks like printing and copying documents like the other new interns. After all, Ethan's specialty was after-sales service, and in e-commerce, after-sales service doesn't require much technical expertise. I was thriving in my internship. Nathan paid me generously, and with the scholarship he helped me secure, I no longer needed to work part-time to cover tuition and living expenses. This gave me more time to focus on my studies, and my life was busy yet fulfilling. Ethan, though, managed to secure an internship at the company through his advisor's connections, but he didn't come in often because he was spending a lot of time dating. After his efforts, he and Sophie reconciled. Ethan cherished this relationship and put in his utmost effort to maintain it. Dating is a very expensive and time-consuming activity. He took Sophie shopping, to the movies, on dates, and celebrated various birthdays, Christmas, Valentine's Day. Money flowed out like water, and gradually, Ethan started to feel the strain. He tried to take Sophie to cheaper restaurants, but after just one visit, she argued with him. "You guys, Ethan is so ridiculous." I spent 2 hours getting ready, washing my hair, and changing into new clothes, and he took me to eat spicy hot pot. That place was so smoky. After sitting there for a while, my clothes and hair were filled with that smell. "He just looks down on me." Sophie angrily threw her bag on the table, her eyes red with anger. I was buried in my book when I heard this and looked up in confusion. Is it not okay to take someone on a date to eat spicy hot pot? Sophie walked over and pinched my face. "Are you stupid?" He took me to eat spicy hot pot, which means I'm only worth a bowl of spicy hot pot to him. Today he takes me to eat spicy hot pot, and tomorrow he'll take me to eat plain steamed buns with plain water. Besides, if dating means only eating spicy hot pot, then isn't it better to stay single? Why bother dating? Lowering your standard of living is absolutely out of the question. Sophie's views on love were very different from mine, and my beliefs were shaken. After all, in my view, dating is about mutual sacrifice and sharing both the good times and the bad. But what about people who are really poor? How do they date? Sophie rolled her eyes. If you're already poor, of course you have to find a way to make money. Dating costs money and time, and you can't even afford to eat properly. How could you possibly have the time or energy to think about dating? Moreover, if a man truly loves a woman, would he really want her to suffer with him? Seeing my dazed expression, Sophie pulled a chair over and sat across from me, lecturing me earnestly. Gu Qiao, don't be foolish. Everyone says men have 3 great joys in life: promotion, wealth, and the death of one's wife. Why would you want your wife to die after you've become wealthy? Naturally, you'd go find a younger, more beautiful woman. Do you think that if you spend your whole life suffering and struggling with a man, he'll be grateful to you? He'll just think he's awesome and has charisma. Once he's rich, the first person he'll kick out is you, because you've seen him at his worst, and he doesn't have the confidence to brag in front of you anymore. That's exactly what happened. After Ethan was reborn and became young again, the first thing he did was replace me, his old wife. I held Sophie's hand. If you have something to say, say it. In our previous life, although we lived in the same dormitory, we rarely had time to chat. Because I was always working, rushing around the shops near the school gate with a backpack every day. When my roommates were still sleeping, I had already left. By the time I rushed back to the dormitory in the evening, they were all getting ready to sleep. Life went on at its own pace. Sophie and Ethan argued constantly. I, on the other hand, poured all my energy into my studies and work. Summer vacation came quickly, and I applied to stay in the dormitory as usual. I hadn't been back to my parents' house in 2 years. When I got married last time, my parents demanded 300,000 yuan as a dowry from Ethan, threatening that if he didn't pay, they'd take a megaphone to his village and shout it out, making his parents unable to hold their heads up for the rest of their lives. Although I eventually paid the money myself, my parents' actions left me feeling ashamed in front of Ethan. At that time, Ethan gave me immense encouragement. He said my parents were bad people, but he would always be good to me. He promised he would give me a real home. I had already repaid my parents' debt from my previous life. In this life, I owe no one. I worked tirelessly, even spending weekends at the office, almost sleeping there. My colleagues kept trying to persuade me, especially our team leader. Qiao, even though you're young, you need to take care of your health. Are you having difficulties in your personal life? Don't worry, if there's anything you need, just tell me. If it can be solved with money, it's no problem. I laughed and cried as I refused, but the matter eventually reached Nathan. Here, take this bonus. Looking at the check for 300,000 yuan, I was speechless. Boss, is the bonus that much? The company was full of young people, and the atmosphere was great. Everyone called Nathan boss, and after a while, I just went along with it. Nathan nodded. You're worth that much. At that time, houses in many prefecture-level cities were only around 3,000 to 4,000 yuan per square meter. The bonus Nathan gave me was enough to buy a house. The head of the e-commerce department received a commission based on sales. Whatever Frank earned, you'd earn the same. I took a deep breath. Frank was our team leader, a computer science graduate from a top university. And I was just a third-year student after summer vacation. The key point was that the commission rate was extremely high, at least several million yuan a year. I opened my mouth, wanting to refuse but unable to bring myself to do so, standing there in a state of inner conflict. Nathan walked over and gently patted the top of my head. I said, "You're worth it." Dazed, I stumbled out of the office, feeling like I'd been hit by a falling pie. Is there a boss in this world more generous than Nathan? Absolutely not. Hey, Gu Qiao, want to buy some virtual currency to play around with? I was still lost in my daydream of earning millions a year when our team leader tapped me on the shoulder. What currency? Bitcoin. It just came out recently, and I think it's pretty interesting. Bitcoin? Bitcoin. The one that was worth a few cents when it first came out and then rose to $140,000 per coin? So, I bought all the Bitcoin with the $300,000 check, totaling 500,000 coins. There's no need to buy too much of this stuff, it's not easy to sell in large quantities later. With 500,000 Bitcoin, what else do I have to worry about in life? Suddenly, I felt invincible. In the future, I'll be a billionaire, what do I have to fear? Of course, I still have to work. Even if I'm rich in the future, I still need to eat and buy a house now. Brother, I finally found you. I was carefully reviewing the operational reports when the sudden sound of a baby crying echoed through the office. Lily? Tao Hua, why are you here? Ethan stood up nervously, his face flushing red. Brother, something's happened at home. Everyone in the office stood up. Lily was only 19 years old, and with her baby face, she looked like a high school student at first glance. A high school student holding a baby, the scene was odd no matter how you looked at it. Ethan, who is this? Ethan pulled Lily by the hand and walked toward the door. I remember now. Ethan's family did have an accident a year ago. His father broke his leg in a construction accident, and it was pretty serious. I even helped cover some of the medical expenses at the time. But why did Lily bring the child here? Lily was a traditional rural girl who dropped out of school after junior high to work and support her brother's education. After working for several years, she fell in love with a boy from the village and married him young, having children soon after. Ethan's family received a dowry of 100,000 yuan from the other family, but the bride's dowry was only 3 sets of bedding, so Lily's life after marriage was very difficult. However, she was extremely proud of her older brother who attended a prestigious university, always talking about him constantly. Ethan's younger brother was still young, just starting junior high school, so with his father's accident, the family was likely to face some difficulties. Sure enough, Ethan soon came upstairs with his head down. He nervously pulled me aside. Gu Qiao, can you lend me 100,000 yuan? I thought I had heard wrong. What? Gu Qiao, that's the man you've called father for decades. You can't just abandon him, can you? Are you out of your mind? That's your father. What does he have to do with me? Ethan took a deep breath. Well, just consider it a favor from a classmate. Please lend me some money. I'll definitely pay you back. Get lost. Lily was already married and had a child to raise, while Ethan's mother had to stay home to take care of her younger son and the elderly. Thus, the responsibility of caring for Zhang's father fell on Ethan's shoulders. He began dozing off frequently at work, and his performance deteriorated significantly. After summer vacation ended, the company revoked Ethan's internship. Without this easy, well-paying job, Ethan had to start working multiple part-time jobs, and his grades naturally dropped significantly. Finally, when everyone in his senior year was busy looking for jobs and internships, Sophie broke up with him again. Sophie, come out here. Ethan stood at the bottom of the dormitory building, his eyes red, shouting at the top of his lungs for a long time. Diana and I stood by, helpless. Diana's chest rose and fell with anger. Is Ethan crazy? He's broken up with her and he's still clinging on like this. He's been shouting like this for days. I looked at Ethan with disdain. He had been reborn, yet he had managed to ruin his life like this. He couldn't hold down a job, he couldn't study, and naturally, his love life was a mess. I always thought that being reborn meant having a silver spoon, with a bright future ahead. But without effort, there's no future. Just like studying, if you don't work hard, you could repeat high school 10 times and still not get into a good university. Life is the same. Rebirth just means you understand the trends of the times and have a few more opportunities than ordinary people. It doesn't guarantee a life of ease. Even if you want to make money through real estate, you still need to earn your first fortune, right? However, Ethan has always been pretty laid back. In our previous life, he was dragged along by me, and we argued a lot because of it. He loves fishing, painting, and drinking tea. He believes money is endless, and life needs poetry and beauty. As for me, I always want to stand taller and see farther, to explore landscapes I've never seen before. This is driving me crazy. Meeting Ethan was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Sophie was so angry she couldn't eat. You have no idea how ridiculous Ethan is. He's been telling me since we graduated that we should get married right away. He even said that after we get married, we'll work hard together to buy a house here and bring his parents to live with us. His sister is even worse. The last time she came over, I treated her to a meal, and she spent the entire time telling me she needs to have more sons for their old Ethan's family, saying she'll take care of his parents after she gets married. Do they have a throne to inherit or something? Having more sons? Pfft. If someone's conditions are a bit worse, they can work hard, but family values can't be changed. If I don't get out of here quickly, am I supposed to end up as a maid in his family? I hung my head in shame. Ethan's family had said the same thing to me before, and though I felt uncomfortable at the time, I didn't take it to heart. After Ethan pursued her several times, more and more girls started talking about him. Seeing that Sophie still ignored him, he had to give up. After all, he now had to earn his own tuition and living expenses, and besides attending classes, he also had to work part-time, so he was very busy. I was grateful that I hadn't followed Ethan's example and gotten caught up in the whirlpool of love, neglecting everything else. Nathan kept his word and gave me my share of the profits at the end of my senior year. I used that money to take out a mortgage on several properties in prime locations, and my life began to stabilize. Sophie remains one of my closest friends. She passed the civil service exam, and her family bought her a house outright. She now leads a comfortable and carefree life. Many of my classmates stayed in this city, and I became the most successful among them. Later, I heard that Ethan was still single, constantly going on blind dates, but he had no house or car, and his family background was poor. Any woman with better conditions wouldn't want him. Sophie got married to her high school classmate, a suitable match, childhood sweethearts. After attending the wedding, I left the hotel and encountered Ethan at the entrance. He looked haggard, with stubble covering his pale chin. Gu Qiao, are you laughing at me in your heart? I'm just trying to pursue my own love. What did I do wrong? I laughed lightly. Ethan, in my previous life, I thought the same way. After saying that, I got into my 911 and drove away without looking back. In the sunlight, Ethan stood alone at the entrance, watching me, unwilling to leave.